guys, welcome to Time with Mrs Marjot. We're going to have a look at how to read a clock face today. So the first thing that I have done is I've just drawn round a bowl to give us a nice circle shape of a clock face. I've also used my ruler to draw a couple of lines, one down the middle vertically and one across the middle. This will give us an intersection in the middle where roughly the centre of our clock will be, and this will help us with reading our time. If we were doing this properly mathematically, we would do some measuring because each of these angles in the centre is a right angle, and we know that right angles are 90 degrees. But for now, we're concentrating on the clock face and not shape drawing. So the first thing we need to look at with a clock is the hours. I'm going to follow the colours that we use on our teaching clocks in school just to help you. If you don't have colours at home, don't worry, but do have a look at clocks because all clocks are laid out very similar. So the hours are the big numbers that go around the clock face. You should know, most of you, the top of the clock is our o'clock and it is 12. Now, whilst they go in number order 1, 2, 3 round the clock, I'm going to jump a few to put the quarter angles in so that we can space it out better. So I'm going to jump 1, 2 and pop 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. That's just so I can space it out better. Now I'm going to roughly estimate where my hours would be and fill them in. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and back to 12 o'clock. These are the hour numbers. Every time the big hand goes round the clock, the small hand will change to a new hour. Now I don't have any split pins at home, but I have made some little clock hands. So the first one we're going to look at is the short hand, which is the hour hand. And I've coloured it in red to help you remember it is the hours. The way that we read the hour hand is when this hand is pointing directly to a number, we know it is an o'clock. So this hand is pointing at the 12, it will be 12 o'clock. If the arrow, or some hands don't have arrows, but the hand is pointing directly at a number, we can tell, even without the other hand, it is 2 o'clock. It is 5 o'clock. Have a go at a couple of these yourself. What is the time now? Hopefully you have said 9 o'clock. What is the time now? Hopefully you guys can see it's pointing directly at the number and it is 11 o'clock. Let's try just one more. What is the time now? It is 7 o'clock. Okay, so now we're going to look at the minutes. The minutes also go around the clock. However, between each hour number, there are 5 minutes. So on some of the clocks you will see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 little dots. That means our minutes are 5 minutes. In order to get to the next one, the minute hand will have to tick another 5 minutes. It will tick 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, not very evenly spaced out there, sorry, and this one will be 10. If you know your times tables, you will see that we're counting in 5s. So I'm going to spin around the clock and add the extra time in. So we've got 5, 10, 15 minutes, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50, 55. Now remembering, although I haven't put the dots in all the way around, there are 5 minutes between each of the hour numbers. So here we'd have 55, 56, 57, 58, 59, 60. Now we wouldn't write 60 necessarily here because it kind of resets to 0 at the same time. So I'm going to pop 60 in brackets to remind ourselves that there are 60 minutes within 1 hour. Okay, now we can tell the minutes by using this minute hand. Now the first thing to do is just have a look at the hands, and apart from the colours, which I've done to help you recognise minutes and hours, you should be able to see the minute hand is always longer, and this is true for any clock you find. It doesn't matter if the whole clock is black and white, what you will find is the minute hand is always longer than the hour hand, which is shorter. I'm just going to pop the hour hand away. Now, we discussed at the beginning, and hopefully you remember, when the minute hand is pointing at the top of the clock, we have, in minutes, the o'clock. The o'clock is the first one that you guys need to learn. We did it with our hour hand only, and now we're going to pop both of them in. So, the hour hand is pointing directly at the 6. And the minute hand is pointing directly at the 12. This gives us an o'clock. We can read the hour as 6 and the time is 6 o'clock. Can you tell me what the time is? Now, always look at the hour first to help. And we've got the minute hand at the o'clock. It is 3 o'clock. Who can tell me what the time is? I can't spin my hands around, I'm afraid, because I don't have a split pin. So just use your imagination. What is the time now? The hour hand is pointing to the 8. It is 8 o'clock. Let's just try one more. Looking at the hour hand, it is pointing directly at the number 10. We know it is 10 o'clock. Okay, we're going to look at half past now. And half past is half of the clock. So you should be able to work out that our minute hand is going to travel halfway around the clock, pointing at the 6. So when the minute hand has travelled half of the clock, we will have half past. To start with, looking at half past times, we're just going to, I keep wiping my clock, I'm afraid, guys, because in between filming, my cats like to come and sit on the paper, which isn't very helpful. We are going to ignore the minute hand for a minute and just go back to the hour hand. If you remember at the beginning, the way we tell the hour hand is the small hour hand points directly at a red number. When we have half past, the clock has travelled halfway between the 12 and the 1. So what happens is the hour hand will travel halfway between the 12 and the 1. This will give us half past 12 o'clock. We're not yet on the 1, so we need to look back to the hour hand at 12 and travel halfway between the 12 and 1 o'clock. Let's have another practice. So if the hour hand was on the 3 o'clock and half an hour had passed, the hour hand will swap and be between the 3 and the 4. It's not yet 4 o'clock. So we need to go back to the 3 and know that it is 3:30. Let's try that again. Can you tell me what the time is? The hour hand has travelled. It's halfway between two numbers. Halfway is 30:30. We can't go to the 11 yet. We're not quite there. It is 10:30. Let's try one more. The clock hour hand has travelled halfway between the 8 and the 9. We're not yet at 9 o'clock, so we need to go back to the 8 number, and it is 8:30. If we add in our minute hand, this is what 8:30 would look like, with the minute hand pointing halfway around the clock. Let's just remember that half as a fraction would be cutting something into 2 pieces. We'd write it as 1/2. The spelling is a bit tricky because it has a silent ul, and the clock has travelled halfway around the clock. That gives us 30:30. But remember that this hour hand, doesn't stay still. As the clock ticks round, the hour hand will also move. When we get back to the o'clock, it will be pointing at a number. So let's just try a few more of those 30:30s. What is the time if the hands are here? The time is 10:30. We go backwards because we're not at 11 o'clock yet. It's gone past 10 o'clock, not yet to 11. It's 10:30. Let's try another one. It is 30:30. Looking at the hour hands, the red ones, it's not yet at 2 o'clock, so it's 1:30. And let's remember that half is halfway round the clock, so let's count the minutes. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30. So 30 minutes gives us our 30:30. 30 is half of 60. 60 has 6 tens. We half the number 6 to get 3 tens, 30 minutes for 30:30. Okay, next we're going to look at 15:15. Now, going back to thinking about our fractions, half is half of the clock. To look at a quarter, let's draw a clock face. I know it's not a perfect circle, it's just a sketch. We're going to cut it in half, and we're going to cut it in half again. This gives us 1, 2, 3, 4 pieces, and you should know from your fractions that is how we write 1/4. We don't say fourths in England, we say quarters. And we would write the word quarter. So for 15:15, the clock has travelled one of those quarters, hitting this number here. So let's go back to our clock. If we put our minute hand to travel a quarter, you can just see where I've sketched in my lines that we have a quarter. 1/4, 2/4, 3/4, 4/4, but the clock's travelling this way. So for 1/4, we're starting at the top. We're travelling 5, 10, 15 minutes to give us our quarter of the clock. So 15 minutes is our quarter past. It will always land on the number 3. So let's just pop in here, it's a little bit tight. quarter past. And I'm going to just draw an arrow because I haven't got enough space there. On the 3 is quarter past. So let's try a couple of times. Just with half past, when the hour hand is on the clock, it doesn't sit still. When the minute hand ticks quarter past, the hour hand will have travelled a small way, roughly a quarter of the distance between the 8 and the 9. So here we can see our hour hand has gone past the 8, just a little way, and it is a quarter past 8 o'clock. Let's try another one. We know that we have travelled 5, 10, 15 minutes, a quarter of the way around the clock. It is quarter past the 11, so it is quarter past 11. We're not yet at the 12. Let's try another one. This time we are a quarter away around the clock, past 5 o'clock. Last one. What is the time? It is a quarter past 1. Okay, this time we're going to look at quarter 2. To travel quarter 2, we have our minute hand on the 9. Thinking about your fractions, the minute hand has passed 1 quarter, 2 quarters, which is half, 3 quarters away round the clock. It's just got 1 quarter left to go. So it is a quarter to the next o'clock. If we look at the minutes, we can see that we've got 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45 minutes completed, which gives us our quarter to the next o'clock. And again, thinking about our fractions, we make our rough sketch of a clock face. We're cutting it down the middle into 2 halves, so we're halving again. We have got 1, 2, 3, 4 quarters. For a quarter to, this one is a quarter past quarter. The clock has already travelled 1, 2, 3. It's got this one left to go. Okay, so it's actually completed solidly 1 quarter, 2 quarters, 3 quarters is finished, and it's got just that 1 quarter left to go until it reaches o'clock. So we call it a quarter to. Let's have a look at our clock. So got no space here, so I'm going to squash it in sideways, I think. Quarter to is on the 9. So our minute hand is pointing at the 9 with 1 quarter left to the o'clock. What do you think happens to our hour hand on a quarter? It's going to travel. It's going to go beyond halfway between the numbers because half part is at the bottom, and it's going to travel 3 quarters of the way around. So when we talk about a quarter to, we're looking at the minute hand. Excuse us, all of you who've watched my video will know that is Jack. Down you go, Jack. We go quarter to, and we're looking at the hour hand. It's nearly at the 1. So this time, instead of going backwards, we're looking at what the next one is going to be. It's a quarter to 1 o'clock. It's just got that little quarter to travel until it gets to 1 o'clock. Let's try another one. What time do you think it is now? It's gone past the 4 o'clock. We've got 1/4 of the clock left to go. It is 5 o'clock. When that minute hand has ticked around the last quarter, our hour hand will be on the 5 and it will be 5 o'clock. Let's try a couple more. Our time is 1/4 the next o'clock, 11. And a final go. Bit tricky without my split pin. The time is 1/4 of the clock left to get to 7. We're not quite at the 7, so the time is 7:15. If the hands were to tick-tock round, not the dance with the tick of the clock, as we get to the o'clock, we would then be on 7 o'clock. Okay, we're just going to go through the last little bit now. It's getting more advanced, so if you find time tricky, go back and just do your o'clocks and your half past to start with, adding in 1/4 past and 1/4 when you get better at those. Don't jump too quickly with time. Go back to your hour hand and your o'clocks and practice that really well first. Some of you, however, are pretty good at time. So when we don't have an o'clock, 1/4 past, a half past or a 1/4 we're counting the minutes. So if I were to put my clock hands here, we know that the hour hand is pointing just past the 7. And we need to find out how many minutes past 7 it is. So we start counting those blue numbers. Between each hour, there are 5 minutes. So we count 5, 10. It is 10 past 7. Let's try another one. Bit fiddly, these clock hands. Okay, this time we're not at half past yet. We've gone something past 10 o'clock and we're going to count the minutes. We start from our 0, we start counting from our o'clock. It's 5, 10, 15, 20, 25 minutes past 10 o'clock. Remember what I said, this is more advanced time, so if this is confusing, go right back to the beginning of the video. Just practice your o'clocks and your half pasts first. Let's try another one. Okay, here our hour hand has travelled past the 1 o'clock. We know it's something past 1 o'clock. We count our minutes, 5, 10, 15, 20 past 1 o'clock. When we go beyond the half past, we start to count the minutes left to an o'clock. So if I swap our hands over, let's have a little look at this. Whenever we talk about a to an o'clock, we jump to our next o'clock. So we've gone past 4 and we're nearly at 5. So it's something to 5 o'clock because we've gone halfway and more. Let's count how many minutes we have left. 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes left to travel to our o'clock. So we say it is 20 to 5. Let's try another one. Here our hour hand is nearly at the 8. It's way past the 7 and it's actually only got a small amount of the clock left to go until we get to an o'clock. So let's count the minutes. 5, 10 minutes to 8. We would say it is 10 to 8. Okay, do practice that. It's much more advanced. Find the clocks in your house, have a go at guessing what the time is, and if you're not sure, check with an adult if you've read it right. We do have these digital type clocks. I don't know if you can see the numbers on there. These give us exact time. So at the moment, my clock is telling me it is 16 minutes past 10. But what we need to do is practice reading off a clock face, because when we're travelling around in bus stations and train stations and places like that, you'll often see a large clock on the wall, and it's really helpful to be able to read the time. Okay, last little bit, we're just going to recap. So we've got an o'clock. The hour hand is pointing directly to an hour number. When the clock has travelled a quarter of the way around, the hour hand will have travelled a small quarter of a distance between the numbers. We would have quarter past 8 o'clock. As the minute hand ticks round to the half past, the hour hand will have travelled halfway between the 8 and the 9. It is half past 8 o'clock. Once we get this side of the clock, we start looking at the time in the sense of how many minutes to the next o'clock. Here we are at the 9. We have got a quarter of the clock to go. It is a quarter to, tick tock, tick tock, tick tock, not the dancing version, 9 o'clock. Okay, well done. We're just going to quickly, if I move this out the way very carefully, look at how we would write o'clocks digitally for those of you who are quite certain and more secure in your times. If you're new to time or find it tricky, please stick with the hours and the half past to start with. 3 o'clock. We know the hour is 3. We write 2 dots, and we know that at o'clock our hand is at the top of the clock and we have 0 minutes. Quarter past 3, we know that our hand has, the minute hand, has ticked a quarter of the way around the clock. If you remember when we did our quarters, it's 15 minutes. 5, 10, 15. Half past, we're halfway around the clock. Our hand is pointing directly down. We would write 3:30. 30 minutes is half of an hour. It is halfway round the clock. For quarter to 4, we're not going to write the 4, we're still going to write the 3. However, let me just bring my clock in to show you. For quarter to, we have travelled a long way. We have travelled 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45 minutes around the clock. So on a digital clock, this will be shown as 3:45. 45 minutes past the hour, there's just a quarter left to go to the next o'clock. So when we speak time and when we write digital time, it can look a little bit different. But for those of you who are more advanced, this is where you need to start looking to heading towards and working out those 10 past, 25 past, 10 to kind of times. I hope you've learnt something today. Time is very tricky to get the hang of, so don't give up. Practice your o'clocks and your half pasts first. Going back to your clock face, practice your o'clocks and your half pasts first. That's the first step to learning about time. Practice makes perfect. Do send in all your time work to the student email address, and I look forward to seeing what you've been doing. Bye.